Very much. Well, I'm joined now on the line from Washington by the senior Democratic Congressman Brad Sherman, who, among other things, is the co-chair of the House of Representatives Israel Allies Caucus. Congressman, very good to have you on Newshour. Thank you for making the time for us. I just wonder, initially, whether you share the concern expressed by the Vice President, Kamala Harris, a couple of days ago, saying, as Israel defends itself, it matters how too many innocent Palestinians have been killed.
I think if one innocent person is killed, that's one too many. War is terrible. This war is being waged more carefully than your country and ours fought World War II. The ultimate moral responsibility for war goes to those who initiate it. And I don't hold Britain or America responsible for the bombing that we did in World War II. Ultimately, that was because of the invasion of Poland by Nazi Germany. The Israelis are doing things that America has never done in our wars. We never provided warnings to citizens in Hanoi. We didn't provide fuel or food to the people of North Korea during the Korean War. And, of course, Britain was involved in that as well. The UN forces and the UN itself never provided warnings of bombings, never provided food or fuel to the combatants, to the civilians on the other side. But I think that ultimately, if Hamas is either willing to stop fighting or to fight without its human shields, then this thing can be resolved.
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, is we had the ceasefire, and ultimately Hamas has decided to stop releasing 10 hostages a day, apparently because they don't want to release men, and the remaining women may have stories of abuse that they don't want told. I
don't want to get too lost in historical parallels, but I guess, when you're talking about, for example, Japan or North Korea or Germany, these were the wars between countries, and this is Israel taking on a non-state actor with 2 million Palestinians in the way. And, I mean, the question is not whether Israel should prosecute its war, but it's, that quote from Kamala Harris was how. And, let me put another quote to you.
Getting back to your non-state actor, our war in Afghanistan was precipitated by Al-Qaeda, a non-state actor. There's nothing in the rule of armed conflict that says that you have a different responsibility whether you're waging war against a non-state actor versus a state actor.
But you certainly have the same responsibility towards civilians, and I just wonder.
Absolutely, and I'm saying that Israel should be.
Put the question. Okay. The French president raised yesterday, Emmanuel Macron, just what is realistic. He said the total destruction of Hamas, ? Does anybody think that's possible? If it's that, the war will last 10 years. Is it a war that you think is worth prosecuting to that extent?
Well, we destroyed Al-Qaeda in far less than 10 years. Did we destroy the philosophy? No. Did we then have to worry about ISIS? Yes.
And you had to stay as the occupying power for 20 years.
Well, no, we didn't. We happened to have done so, and that was a bad part of the strategy. But if the goal is to at least very significantly degrade a terrorist group, we accomplished that in the first few months in Afghanistan. And it is appropriate to evaluate Israel according to the law of armed conflict, but also against every other country that has ever waged war. And it's very hard to find any example of a country waging war that did even what Israel is doing, let alone what its critics are asking it to do.
I guess, given the numbers of Hamas fighters that appear still to be in existence, it seems to be the vast majority, according to briefings from Israeli officials and US intelligence as well. And given just how densely populated southern Gaza is, do you think that there is a number of civilian casualties that will just be intolerable, even for as staunch a supporter as you to stomach?
We certainly, look, one person dying wrongfully is terrible. And I don't know if you reach a point, but the fact is no one ever asked that question in World War I or World War II or Afghanistan.
Does that make it illegitimate to ask the question now?
Well, if you're going to say that all of the rules of law and all of the methods we use to evaluate countries' behavior in war up until this point is irrelevant, and that we have a standard for Israel that we have not applied to any other country at war in history, I'd point out in World War I, ultimately, we won it, you won it, because of a food blockade of the Axis countries. So compared to that, did the Kaiser and the Austro-Hungarians get food shipments from Britain?
Well, let me bring the debate up to now. There is going to be a debate in the Senate on aid to Israel. One of your Democratic colleagues, Senator Peter Welch, has said, "I support Israel aid. I always have. My big issue is not with the Israel aid, it's with the Israel bombing that's having such a devastating impact on civilians." If you've got people such as those on your side in the Democratic Party who are concerned about the way in which this war is being waged, what would you say to assuage those concerns?
Well, what I've already said here, but in addition, yes, Israel should be doing everything possible to minimizing these losses. And Israel, by doing much of its work with ground troops rather than bombing, many objectives, they say, we could achieve that by bombing, but that would be excessive civilian casualties. So we'll put our forces at risk, and some of them will be shot, but we'll avoid hundreds of Palestinian casualties. So there are dead members of the IDF caused by Israel's decision to use ground forces rather than to experience even more civilian casualties.
And there are also 6,000 dead Palestinian children in Gaza right now.
There are, although I'll point out, and I'll give the BBC a little credit for this, there are 500,000 people killed in Ethiopia, and it got a little coverage on the BBC and virtually no coverage everywhere else. And none of the people demonstrating, because I kind of took the lead here on Tigray in the U.S. Congress, along with a couple other members, none of these people who are aghast at 1,500 or 15,000 deaths in Gaza bothered to lift a finger when there were 40 times as many deaths in northern Ethiopia.
Brad Sherman, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you.
It's an interesting